So in today's video, I'm going to take you guys with me on an exploration of a farmhouse built in the late 1700s. There is a lot of history in this homestead, and we're going to go through all the history and all the images that we took. So it's going to be kind of a long one. I hope you guys stick it out through the end because there are some really cool old transparencies that I found that we're going to showcase at the very end of this video. So I hope you guys enjoy it. So sit tight as we get into this old abandoned farmhouse. So when I got here, I spoke to the owner who lives right across the street. His name is Jeff. Really nice guy. He was really interested in the idea of having the property be photographed. So obviously here I am. And it's a really beautiful old house. He said it was built in 1780. And he said he gutted it out and that they're gonna look to sort of rekindle that flame that this old home once had. Behind me you get this beautiful view of the valley, which he said is much better when there's no fog. You can see out pretty far, but we have a pretty dense fog right now, and you're not going to see too far. Oh, there's a bunny right there. I always get distracted when I make these videos, but let me show you the bunny. So day one was just basically a walkthrough. We got to kind of explore the house and explore the area. It's a 300+ acre farm, and there's a lot to see. The old home that we're going to be going into is mostly sort of in the process of renovation. That's why Jeff really wanted to get this out before the house sort of took a whole new look. And I'm really honored to have been a part of that process and to photograph it.
You're the girl I cry for. And you're the girl I die for.
Block out the name, but that's pretty cool right there. That's a 6th place ribbon in the cattle show. I don't know if you guys can read that part. 1972. Really cool old thing that you see around this beautiful old farmhouse. A lot of old stuff. Some spooky stuff. There's a mask over here that scared the bejesus out of me. But there's old pictures of cows. Things like that. Man, oh man, is it hot in here. Obviously, you guys can tell I'm sweating. I used my exfoliating face wash this morning. Sweating like a son of a bitch. So here we are, back at it, day 2. We've got the 4x5 in tow, and we're gonna be shooting some film that I've never shot before, FPP's Mummy 400, which is gonna give us a little extra speed to walk around and compose at some more manageable shutter speeds in a fairly shadowy house. We're gonna be toggling between this lens, the 135, and the 90. In fact, I think I wanna capture this little trail here on the 90 before I go in, so I'm gonna have to switch it out. But I think this might be my lens of choice. I'm gonna toggle between the two and figure out what works and what doesn't. But ultimately, just waiting for that sun to pop up over the hill right now. Sun rose about 16 minutes ago, and it's nice and bright and beautiful. We got a little bit of fog out today, and I assume once that sun hits all this, that heat from the sun is going to suck that moisture out, and it's going to create a little bit more fog. So I'm gonna try to get some images around here first and then get in the house. But it's gonna be a long day of shooting, so I hope you guys stick around for it. I haven't shot with the 90 in maybe like 2 months. And I forgot just how sharp that lens is when you look through it. Especially with a dark cloth, it certainly helps darken it up, but you can really see quite a bit. Let's go 1/4. First one of the day. The first floor had a bunch of stuff. It had a lot of old photos, and the first thing I wanted to take a picture of was the office with that beautiful light coming through as the light was coming through the back of the house, and that's what we were going to focus on. So our meeting scenarios are going to be kind of tricky today. We obviously got this bright, beautiful early morning sunlight that's coming through on the back side of the house. The front side of the house is still kind of cloaked in darkness, and we're gonna shoot the office now. I'm gonna shoot it at f/22 at 5 seconds, which is about where I'm figuring middle gray is. The highlights, the brightest point, which is the window with the light coming right through, is about a 1/2 second. So we're trying not to blow out the highlights while not just catering to the highlights. So gonna be kind of a tricky one. The darkest shadows in there are the front of the desk, which are about 13 seconds. So I think 5 seconds should give us a little bit of room, a little wiggle room. But excited to see what this Mummy 400 does, because I've never shot it before. So fingers crossed everything turns out well. It's too early in the morning. found some negatives, which is pretty cool, but I also found some transparencies, which is even cooler. One of the pictures that I saw was of Harry Bennett posing back against that fireplace in this very room, which is really cool to find when you can find those little pieces like that that help add to the story. It just kind of really goes a long way. We then moved from the office to the kitchen to the living room, and there's just not a whole lot going on. I did take a shot with the 90 millimeter of this bay window that had this cool plastic wrap on it, and I do talk a little bit about Alexei Konjanatyev's project on ice fishers, which kind of reminded me of that. And it made for an interesting composition, but ultimately not one that I took a lot of B-roll for. One thing that always seems to stand out when I come to old homes are these plastics on the windows, because a lot of these windows are very old, probably original to the actual house. And it reminds me of a magazine that I picked up that I later realized was a book called Ice Fishers by Alexei Konjanityev. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he does this really incredible job of photographing these ice fishermen in these like plastic singular tents where they're just kind of confined to a very small space. You can make out very minute details, but I think it's super interesting. It's one of my favorite magazines that I picked up from Subjectively Objective. I'll probably end up actually buying the book from Alexei because it's just stellar. But when I see these old windows covered in plastic, it starts to kind of remind me of those things. And I'm not necessarily looking for abstract, but I'm certainly not going to avoid abstract. As we made our way up to the second floor, that's where things started to get a little bit more interesting. Everything up there was as it was left. So the first floor I did stage a little bit in the office just to remove some of the junk off the desk, make it a little bit more clean. Upstairs, though, it was the complete opposite. Everything there was as it was found. So the first room that we're going to photograph had a telescope in it, a very old telescope, which I have deemed the astrology room. This room was really interesting. There were definite hazards. Obviously, when you're dealing with an old house that was from the 1700s, there's dips. The floorboards had holes in them. So it was kind of unnerving to be standing up there and looking down and seeing the first floor living room through the floorboards. But there was a lot of stuff just kind of thrown about. Old letters, journals, a lot of photography magazines and stuff like that, which is really cool. But the image I took here was a little bit more unique, the perspective on it at least. So I think I'm not going to do it any justice. I'll just let myself talk about it when I was taking it. I know I look super orange. It's kind of trippy, but there's a skylight in this bathroom over here that I assume the glass broke off and they just replaced it with some orangish plastic. And it's just illuminating this entire area in bright orange, which is really, really cool. So I might take a picture of that. Obviously, I got black and white, but I got this composition set up. I'm going to try to create some separation here. F8. And just rock it. this composition. You've got the telescope pointing out the window. You have this weird old blanket kind of hanging from the roof a little bit, or the pitch. And it makes for a really interesting composition. It helps sort of illustrate what it was like to live here, or who lived here. There's obviously someone, or probably a child, that was really into astronomy, out looking at the stars at night. And it kind of puts you in this like perspective of a child where they're sort of like looking out and trying to escape. And that's why I wanted to take this shot at f8, create a little separation, as if you're sort of separating yourself from the world. If only there was like a little chair sitting there, that would have been even better. But ultimately, pretty happy with the composition. Hopefully the image turns out all right. When you're shooting film, you don't have the benefit of just looking and seeing if it turned out great. You just kind of gotta hope. And that's what I'm doing, hoping. But let's go across the hall to some more bedrooms. The next room was the blue room, as I'm referring to it, or you could call it the prep school jacket room. It just had this really interesting feel. There was a bunch of magazines on the floor, which is where I put my tripod, which did pose some definite issues because when you're standing on a bunch of, loose leaf papers, the tripod might move around a bit. So I had to be really, really still with that image. And I was, but I really wanted to simplify these things. I shot it on the 135. And I really wanted to just kind of make it as simple as possible. Get the window, get the door. Those are the two most sort of interesting aspects of this room. So it kind of made sense. And I quite liked the image. I also just found Photography Welcomes You. This is kind of cool. Old photography magazine. Hey, look at, for all you Pentax 6.7 shooters out there. Wow. So now we're in Jeff's room, as indicated by the name on the door. Jeff's the owner, the person I've been working with to photograph this old farm. I just took a picture of the blue room with the child's prep school jacket and the I'm a milk drinker decal on the door. Those are like the little things that really help build a composition to make it a little bit more even, and also helps tell the story, which obviously you guys know is a huge factor in making a good image, first of all, but then obviously putting together a series of black and white images here, or a sequence of these black and white images. These little details really go a long way in help building the story, and that's what we're trying to do, is tell the story of this old farmhouse. So then we moved to probably the most difficult room in the house, the darkest room in the house, which is the velvet couch room with this peeling wallpaper. It had obviously gotten wet, due in large part to this section of the house being freestanding on the outside. There were these pillars that overhung the roof, or the porch, and the pillars were removed. So this room was just freestanding. It was only being supported by the baseboards, by the floor itself. So as you go in, you can see where it dips and you can see outside. And it was not very comfortable to be in, because I just felt like there was probably hundreds, maybe thousands of pounds of stuff in there, with dressers, magazines, books, couches. And then you add my weight to it with my gear, and it felt a little shaky, a little bit like this. And ultimately, I wanted to get a picture of the couch, but there was a little bit of shake involved. So I just took the shot of the old Victorian couch. I decided to go smaller aperture, f/22, 2.5 minutes. Shot it in the vertical orientation, but unfortunately, as I was in the process of taking that long exposure, I had accidentally moved, and that baseboard sort of like moved around as well. So that's gonna be a blurry image. It's not gonna be great, but it is what it is. You know, you're dealing with an old house, and this is like a free hanging room, which doesn't build a whole lot of confidence, so it's kind of frustrating. But I think that's going to wrap it up for that room. I'm gonna head back downstairs, see if there's any compositions that stand out, and then might just head home. So I kind of wore myself out at this point. I'd spent hours inside, hours outside for the last couple of days, and I felt like I just kind of had seen everything that needed to be seen. Everything that needed to be photographed was photographed. So I decided to make my way out. And on the first day when I left, I was gifted this little pamphlet by Jeff, which kind of helped further tell the story of the family here. So that was really cool. So I just got back to my car, and I didn't even notice because Jeff had left. But he left me this on my door. And that right there is this house. After some talking and hanging out, I get to see it firsthand, and then also get to learn some history about it, which is really, really cool. It makes this sort of stuff more meaningful. To be honest, as I was going around there and photographing stuff, I was like, this is fun and interesting, and maybe we'll make for a decent video. But when you get a backstory, you get an actual story to go along with it, it makes a lot more sense, and it becomes a lot more meaningful. So this is really cool. Thanks, Jeff. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye.
There is a battle, a piling of words, fought in the living room, the meeting hall, the schools. This is the pattern in which we are caught, bound by tradition, superstition, and the rules. If I say freedom, do you think I mean to turn your body loose? If I say help me, would you kneel and pray to be excused?